two, one. Hey everybody, Weston Gleave here with YouTube channel Mr. Weston Gleave, Instagram Weston Gleave, and also TikTok Mr. Weston Gleave. I've got a good friend on the line. I'm probably going to call these segments Driving in the Tesla, because I can just call my friends and go over current events. But I have my good friend here on the line, and we're just chatting about the Charlie Kirk situation and what is going on right now. And I know you're just telling me about it. And yeah, I'll leave it from there.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you, Weston. Thank you for having me on your podcast as well. My name's Rick. I'm the author of many books on various subjects. I've written books on cycles of history, different things dealing with ancient Old Testament, New Testament stuff. I have a background in both neuropsychology, psychiatric tech. I've done a lot of research on various subjects, including assassinations, Kennedy assassinations, and things like that. So in regard to Charlie Kirk's situation, I get a lot of questions on my emails about this, and not only for the actual assassination of him, but where we are in history as it relates to these kinds of events. And right now, we are in a very precarious situation in regard to our nation and the framework that we have in regard to these events that are now basically occurring in this cycle. This is actually a repeated cycle. We're seeing things that happened way back in the 60s that I was an eyewitness to on some things as it relates to the actual events for rioting, revolution, as it relates to instability that goes on with culture, those kind of things. Right now, we're at that cycle. This is the beginning of a new one. It actually started, and when we look back, it'll be a hindsight kind of thing. With the attempted assassination of President Trump in July at the Butler last year. And we'll look back and realize that was the beginning of this cycle phase, which is going to be a civil unrest cycle phase. And where's it going to lead is going to be the big question. Now, of course, there's no way to predict that, but you can give probabilities of that. And that's what I do, is I use the cycles of the past to predict the future as it relates to probabilities. And the probabilities we have now of going into a major insurrection is about 70%. And things like this with Charlie Kirk, the assassination of him, and other things that are going to surround that are going to lead us to some instability here. And that's what we're concerned about.
Right. Well, I think it's safe to say you have background and knowledge to have some predictions and weigh in on this. Before we started the recording, you were telling me about what's going on in the courtroom. You want to expound on that just a little bit?
Sure. I was watching, I was surprised they did it, but it is that they were actually videotaping and showing the actual hearing that was going on with Charlie Kirk's assassin, this Robinson guy, Tyler. And I was just explaining to Weston here that coming from a psychological view, I used to work with people that were sociopaths and psychopaths way back in the 70s when I was working at a psychiatric technician unit, getting my clinical hours for neuropsychology. And I worked with them. There was a 25 free unit. And this guy has all the symptoms that I saw of people who are, in this case, I believe he's probably a sociopath. A psychopath, not sure. That's a whole different ballgame, and I'll explain the difference someday about that. But a sociopath definitely is a person who has been able to displace his basic emotional balance that we all have on the shelf in order to accomplish a goal. And we see this a lot with this young generation. There's a lot of factors involved, the motive of it. A lot of it has to do with drugs. Some of it has to do with the way that you're raised. If you were abused in some way, that could definitely have an effect on it. There's different kinds of variables in regard to how these kind of behaviors. And this guy, watching him right now, when the judge was reading the counts that are against him, indicates indeed that he has sociopathic tendencies. There was no reaction on his face when the judge read, and it was pretty traumatic to hear it. This judge simply read, this man now qualifies for the death penalty due to what they call a capital crime, meaning that he actually planned the death of another person. But in this case, it was done in the public. So now he did it not just because he wanted, in this case, Charlie Kirk dead, but he actually did it in the public. and which adds more to the count against him. Why? Because he's doing it for revenge purposes. In this case, the judge actually said right there in the count, this was for political purposes. So it's pretty scary to think about that there are men and women like him running around thinking that it's okay to kill somebody because you disagree with them. And this guy had no reaction when he read that, none whatever.
Yep.
And he went into the other counts as well, absolutely no reaction. So to me, it indicates he probably has some sociopathic tendencies.
What do you think led him to this, based off his upbringing and just the kind of person that he appears to be? What do you think kind of led him to this point?
Good question. It's hard to say. Obviously, I don't know him, and we're just now finding out and peeling back the layers of his background. He does come from a good conservative religious family. In this case, he was a member of the Latter-day Saint Church, and they evidently have been very conservative and are very politically conservative. And so something happened back there. I've seen a lot of this going on. Yeah, he probably got into drugs very early. He might even be borderline alcoholic. That would definitely have a trigger for that. And as a result of that, if you do those kind of things in a family that's conservative, it creates what we call conflicted between what you know is wrong versus what you're doing in life. And if he was doing things like drugs, maybe he was addicted to pornography or video games even now. That's a surprise when I say that to my friends. Video games are now being looked at from major psychiatrists and psychologists as having an addictive portrayal of behavior patterns in these young men. Just a quick example of that. I read the divorce statistics sometimes, and I'm finding out, and this sounds pretty funny to hear it now, but it really is true. Many men have been addicted to video games because they were children. And when they become adults and they get married, their wives are literally leaving them in the age 30s, 35, and nobody can figure out why. Well, it's because of this addiction that they can't get past. And I'm not kidding you, it's video games. They can't stop playing them.
I'm raising my hand over here, guilty as charged, because I love video games myself, but obviously in moderation. I play when I can.
Well, if you're making a living, then you're not addicted.
Yeah.
But a lot of men are not doing it. They're in their 30s, and I'm reading a lot about this. It's just been shocking. Now, I have to tell you, a video game addiction, if it gets to that point where it's actually affecting you, in this case, probably your love life, it's probably affecting your relationships in general, that is a good sign of an addiction. And you know, and I know you have people that are alcoholics, that are on drugs. They literally exhibit the same kinds of behaviors that you would see as in this case, say a chemical addiction they have for videos.
Yeah.
So young guys got to watch this, because if it's that fierce where it literally controls what direction your life is going, then you're in kind of in a danger zone there. Go ahead.
No, I just think that's an interesting thing you bring up. And I would have to say anything that you get addicted to, whether it's drugs, alcohol, pornography, video games, anything that gets you, it's obviously for that chemical fill, that dopamine rush, and the continuing getting it, but you're not living real life. So you're living a fake life. It's a false life.
Absolutely. Good point. Very good point. That is a form of displacement. As you know, displacement, which is Freudian psychology, and I never agreed a lot of it, but he's right about this. Displacement literally means that you don't want to take responsibility for whatever your actions are. In this case, playing videos. So you displace that on something else and blame it on that. In videos games, it can be a displacement. A lot of men, and there are some women too, but mostly men, do that for the reasons you mentioned. It is an endorphin high. It does affect you in regard to, people ask, well, why do you play the video games? And the response is usually, well, because I like it. And that's really the motive there, is you like it.
Yeah.
There's a scene in Dirty Harry, where there was a scene. This is the very first one he made, Clint Eastwood, and it's always stuck with me. It happened. This is in '71 when it came out, and the whole premise of the movie was that as Dirty Harry was a cop, sort of rebellious. He was a detective in the homicide a detective region in San Francisco, and every time he had a partner, they wound up getting caught, killed, or shot because he didn't play by the rules when it came time to confronting some of his people he was against. And this one guy was a literal serial killer. And he was killing people. He was taking them out from from towers and that kind of thing. And the chief of police was very angry at Dirty Harry. And he said, "You know what?" He goes, "You really don't know what you're up against." And Harry responded to him, "Yes, I do." And he says, "How do you know that?" He goes, "Because the guy that's doing it likes doing it."
Wow.
And
Wow.
he literally, and that always stuck with me because the reason why people do these kind of things is they like it.
Yeah.
And it gives them that rush you're talking about. So this kid here, if indeed I'm right about whatever diagnosis I'm giving him, I don't know the guy, but his background appears to be a man who's very conflicted because he knows what he's doing. That is in his moral life, in regard to he's obviously a homosexual,
Yeah.
and as a result of that, plus the fact that he found a man who was against that verbally, and he was getting tremendous response from that from people, by the way, who I've been reading about how a lot of men influenced by Charlie Kirk to change their behavior as it relates, in this case, to things like being a transgender. And it bothered this guy and his roommate. That's what we're reading about now. They had a lot of I guess the emails are coming out. I haven't read all of them, but I guess the emails are coming out about what they used to email about. And this kid definitely has some addictions there as it relates to this. So now again, we're not sure if it's chemical yet. We will find out, but that needs to be. We need to find that out down the road to see what his real motives was.
Right. Well, any words of caution you give to anybody right now? I mean, there's been a ton of social media. I mean, this really started a reawakening. A lot of people saying I'm going back to church, myself included. I've always considered myself a Christian, Latter-day Saint, but I've kind of been in the gray area lately, not too motivated, but this kind of sparked it back up in me and saying, hey, I want to fight for freedom. But I feel like that might need to come with some caution too, because there's obviously opposing people out there, and I just want to get any words of advice or maybe caution on your part for potential future events and where the world could potentially be going.
Sure, that's a very good question, by the way, and the frame of reference is the good way to express it. The bottom line is this: if we go back to the cycles, and I wrote several books about this, we go back and look at history in regard to what they call the 6 apocalypses, and those are the cycles that affect mankind the most over the many centuries.
We're back. My last card got full of memory, so we will leave off or we'll start where we left off. So here we
go. What I was talking about earlier was the 6 apocalypses in cycles of history, and how mankind has basically reacted to that. Now, the 6 apocalypses that I found when I did research on these, I wrote 2 volumes on it. Advocate of Destiny is the name of the first book. And in that book, I show that the main variables that affects mankind's history are based on the following: earthquakes, economic collapse, revolution, war, cycles of plagues, and there's one more in there. What is it? Cycles of plagues, revolution, war, economic collapse, and there's one more in there. Anyway, what I found that as these cycles go up and down in history, they sometimes cross. In other words, they peak at the same time. Say economic collapse and drought. When those two cross, in most cases, then inevitably you're going to have a reaction from the human race. In this case, it could be a war, it could be a major revolution, it could be the collapse of the economy. That was the one I was trying to remember, economic collapse. Economic collapse is one of the main reasons why mankind reacts to these things, especially if they're triggered by some of those other variables, like earthquakes or famines or that kind of thing. So what I found over these years that I did this research is that some of these do peak. And right now, we are now entering one of those peak cycles. In this case, it'll be economic problems that'll be occurring over the next 3 years. And of course, the earthquake cycle now is taking its course as well. So when you see those kind of things, then that's the red flag for me as a cyclic researcher about where this is going to go. And now with this thing with Charlie Kirk and the things that had happened with President Trump a year ago, I believe that window between those two, between Trump's assassination attempt and what Charlie Kirk just went through, that's the window now that to me is sending the signal as a cycle research guy that we are heading now for a revolution cycle. And if there's going to be another trigger, or say a plague, or perhaps a famine, or at least a trigger of a famine, maybe a drought, those things indicate to me that we're heading for another cycle peak here. And I believe that's already started. I'm not saying it's going to start. I think it already has. And where that's going to go and when is going to be the next subject of another hour or so. But it looks like that we're heading for probability of these couple of cycles peaking here over the next 3 years.
With those listening, what can those listening do to prepare for a cycle like this?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, spiritually, you have to prepare. If there's anything we're going to learn, once again, I hate repeating myself, anything we're going to learn from what happened with our old friend Charlie Kirk is going to be the guys that did this, all right, totally have lost their way spiritually. It appears that they've completely debauched themselves to the level that human life no longer has any value. And of course, in our culture, that's becoming more prevalent. We're seeing that cycle, if you will, which is part of the revolutionary cycle as it relates to the way, the means of loving your fellow man. These guys have whacked hold of that. And we're seeing that more and more in this generation, this young generation under 25, that seems to forget the importance of human nature. So my understanding, and if you kind of have to kind of play this one by ear sometimes. But if this guy was indeed debauched as much as we think he is, and it appears that he was a very prominent homosexual, in regard to what his behavior pattern were, all the websites and the different kinds of emails that are coming out about him indicates that he was very conflicted with his friends about this, and his parents particularly. So, and he had been doing this for quite a while. He'd been with this guy, I guess, for quite a while. So as a result, you become so debauched, you forget your own morals. So my suggestion right now for those that are out there that are going through any kind of addiction like that, or whatever it might be, that if it is porn, if it is drugs, if it is anything like that, you need to get back on track spiritually. And that is going to be my recommendation, because you're going to need it for the events that are about to unfold here over the next 3 to 4 years.
I'd have to agree with you. And I think that it was an awakening for me to go, number one, go back to church, because the principles that are taught in church will help you refrain from porn and everything else, which I think are destroying the fabric of society, which I believe is the family. Whereas church and Christ's teachings and the gospel, it's all about the family. It's all about the family unit. And I think you're going to learn those things at church or in your scriptures. Go read the Bible, go read the 10 Commandments, go do your best to live by them. If you can't do it on your own, which this life is tough, I get it, find a support group. Hopefully this podcast helps. Hopefully just hearing these words sparks something in you to say, hey, you know what? I want to make a change. And you just start 1% a day. It's not an overnight thing. Just one little thing every day. And it's okay if you mess up. It happens to the best of us. Just do better and just start. Have some hope and faith in yourself and a little belief in yourself that you can do it. It's crazy. Me and my brother were talking the other day of just how rampant pornography is these days. I mean, I'll be on social media just viewing a random video, and then the next advertisement is promoting pornography, and it's just like, I didn't ask for that. It just pops up because it probably reads my profile that I'm a 38-year-old single male, and it's like trying to attack me. So what I do is I'll go into the settings and I'll say I don't want to see this, and that helps. But it's just crazy that the fabric of society, the family is being attacked. It's being attacked through pornography and everything else we're talking about.
Very good.
So
Man, that is so profound. I'll tell you, we won't get into it now. We'll use this for another time. But one of the things I did study was what are the signs out there, and how is it done in regard to subverting a culture? How do you subvert a culture to get to the level where it's totally debauched? And in my opinion, we are seeing the end result of a plan to do just that, as Weston just defined it. That literally is what's going on right now. And I've been studying this for 50 years. I've interviewed people who are involved with this very thing, where the money was coming from, how they planned on doing it, in regard to literally targeting Western culture, especially America. How are we going to destroy this? So out of the ashes, we can build up what they call the New World Order. And that's what's going on here now. We are seeing the result, as Weston just defined it. We are seeing the result of this plan. And it is a plan, by the way. There was guys that actually sat down in high places back in the 1930s and then again in the 1950s and literally outlined, how do we destroy Western culture? And I'll tell you, a lot of it was based on debauchery, was based on drugs. I can give you 2 hours on drugs alone, on how that was done and where they did it, how they infiltrated the entire drug cartels. They took them over for the purposes of literally getting all sorts of new kinds of drugs here in this country. Fentanyl being just one of the latest. There was other ones that went before that. So yeah, that was the plan, and we are seeing it. This is why I feel so sad for these young men like this who've lost their spiritual ways as defined by Weston, because of the fact they don't realize they're victim of this conspiracy. And that's what it is. It is literally a plan to subvert our culture. Now, I've written a book about this. I haven't published it yet, but I did a lot of interviews with people in high places about this, and I was very impressed by what they told me. And this was done many years ago, so before all the stuff started unfolding even worse than it is. So yeah, literally a spiritual foundation is the way to prevent from getting sucked up into this vacuum that you're now seeing. And you're going to see it. It's going to get worse. It is going to divide the nation, by the way. That's another thing we haven't talked about.
yeah.
Stockholm.
Well, I have to say, I have a lot of empathy for those that get trapped in these ways of thinking, because like you said, this stuff has been planned since the 1930s by apparently smart people to do it. And on the surface level, just like myself, I'm 38 now, but in my mid to late 20s, it's easy to be deceived. And just like an iceberg, you only see the tip of the iceberg, but as you go down deeper and deeper and deeper and see all the layers, you go, whoa, what I saw above water isn't the root of the problem. And I think that's what you're talking about right now, as you're going, look. And so many people are being deceived by quick bits of video and sound bites and quick things on social media that get you to side and get you emotionally riled up. And I see this all the time. And you aren't asking, well, you should ask the bigger questions. You should ask, why is this being shown to me on the media? What does that mean? What's the deeper meaning here? Again, Charlie Kirk was going to campuses to have open discussions, to question. I posted a video the other day where I'm like, you know what? Some people I actually think want to keep and live their lie, because if they question it enough, it might get to the root, to unbury the lie, and then they have to change their ways and change their way of thinking and go, hey, you know what? Maybe I was deceived. And I think that is something we should all take into consideration as you're living your life and making decisions. And, you know, I'm a seeker of truth. And that's what I hope this podcast does, is I'm willing to hear various opinions and things on this, but you obviously have a lot of history with this and credibility, and not everybody's going to agree with you, but I think you have a lot of evidence to back up what you say. And that's where I think anybody listening to this should take a look at it. You should study it out. And if you disagree with something, ask the questions or go look for the information or present some argument as to why you disagree. But I think that's the beauty of freedom of speech, which we do have. I think it's wrong for somebody to take somebody's life due to the fact they were speaking. And that's kind of the situation that we're in right now with the Charlie Kirk assassination. Sorry, Rick, you were breaking up those last few seconds. You want to say that again? Shoot, it's still breaking up. I'll let you know when it comes back on. And there we go. It's working.
All right. In regards to the no difference this guy doing last 30 years.
Hey, Rick, let me call you right back just because it's choppy. I'll call you right back.
Okay.
Okay. And we'll do this. We'll call back and go to history. There we go. Boom.
Is that better?
There, much better. There we go. That's perfect.
What I was going to say was, in regard to this guy's motive, whatever it was, we'll know now as things are starting to come together. I guess all of the emails that are from the exchanges this man has, plus other people that knew him that are coming out about his behavior patterns. One of the things that you learn in regard to making choices, and this is Wes's point, he's right on the butt of this one. The men that decided that they were going to subvert our culture so many years ago recognized that it's much more difficult to make choices if you have addictions, because you've already eliminated much of the window that you use to make the choice. Why? Because you're addicted. So as a result, you narrow that. And as you keep narrowing it, there is an adverse reaction psychologically to it, and that is frustration, anger, and in a lot of cases, debauchery. And that's exactly what they wanted in regard to targeting this generation in regard to that. And that's what you're seeing here. So choices are the most important thing you have. It is God's given free agency that gives you that window that you need in order to make a choice. In this case, we're talking spiritual choices here. And that is exactly the way that we prevent and resist the onslaught of this movement to destroy our culture, is to be able to make sure you can have choices that will lead to wise decisions, hopefully lead you towards God, in my opinion. One of the things that they found out, they cannot overthrow a nation that has a faith-based culture. It's impossible. So they have to destroy the faith of a nation. It doesn't have to be, all by 50%. All they need is about 3%, they discovered. That's all they need. 3 to 4% of the nation that has these issues we're talking about in regard to this guy that killed Charlie. If you get that many up there, then you're going to get to the point of division in a nation. And we're just about. So that shows you where we are. Going back to church, getting back to biblical belief as regard to the 10 Commandments, laying a foundation down for that. That really is the choices that should be being made here.
Yeah, I agree. You've used the word debauchery a few times. I have kind of an understanding of the word, but can you define that, of what debauchery means?
Yeah, it's a French term. It literally means to the point that you no longer have any moral compass.
Gotcha.
That's the best way to define it.
Well,
we've seen this a lot. There are 22 civilizations recorded in history, all right? And if you go back and look at all of them, the question that you asked, and this is what the founding fathers did in our nation, they wanted to know what was the reason why some of the greatest nations that ever lived, going back to the Greeks, the Romans, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, they built some of the greatest civilizations ever recorded. What led to their destruction? So they took 11 years, and a lot of it, there's 34,362 letters that were written between them. They wanted to know, how do we prevent, this is back in the 1700s, the 18th century, they wanted to know how to prevent this. How do we prevent this from happening to us? That was their big number one question. So they studied these civilizations, and they wanted to know what it was that we could do. And as a result, we have the Constitution, which is designed to protect us from something that never changes. This is them, and that's human nature. Human nature always goes in one direction if you come to the point where you no longer have any morals. So how do we protect the morals of a nation? That's what their question was. Well, the Constitution basically is based upon that idea, to have the freedoms that you need to be able to make your own decisions. And that's what they're talking about here. So when you get to the level of debauchery, when you no longer have any morals, that's where those who wanted to destroy our culture have got us. And this young man, and this is my opinion now, I don't know him obviously, and I don't want to make any judgments, but it's obvious that what he did, which we all know what he did, it was based upon motive of hatred towards somebody. Well, one of the things you find, this one was working my clinical hours, and I work with some people that had these kind of issues, is that when you level that you don't have any morals, do anything to satisfy the craving of getting rid of that anger. And that is what we're seeing here now. Now, it also goes back to an abortion. When a nation of our caliber, based on Judean Christian ethic, slaughters babies for the sake of free choice, that's important. We are reaching that level of debauchery. Well, why wouldn't this man that killed Charlie Kirk not have any moral compass, if indeed he's feeling that life doesn't have any value anyway? Why would it? We're killing babies in the womb, so I guess it doesn't have any value. See where I'm going with that? That's a rhetorical question, but that's what's happening. Life is not.
Sorry, it broke up for just a second. You there? Say that last thing again.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Well, really quick, everything you're talking about, I didn't know that's what debauchery meant. And that makes sense of what you're saying, and it makes. I'm grateful for my upbringing. We'd go to church every Sunday. I was always taught, don't do drugs, don't view pornography, live the 10 Commandments. And it's so interesting to me, even years ago, how the 10 Commandments were being taken out of the schools, which
that's correct.
Is all part of this
plan, by the way.
Yeah,
that was planned.
Makes total sense, because if that's a way, it helps take away that moral compass. And then look at everything that's been infiltrating the schools, which is a topic for probably another day.
We'll do that. Absolutely. We'll talk about that if you want, how that was done, who financed it, by the way, how that was completed. It was an incredible, a lot of people have come forward recently on that, and I've got a lot of documentation on it. But yeah, that's one of the ways they wanted to destroy our culture, was to take two things out: the 10 Commandments and the prayers. Now, when I was a kid, I had a Mr. Loomis. He was my fourth grade teacher. He would read the Bible for 10 minutes before class started. He would get there in front of the class and read the Bible, and we would talk about it. And then when we were done, he would let us offer a prayer. Now, this is in California, by the way. I live in California.
Wow.
So that shows you how far we've gone.
Isn't that something? And even I remember when I was in grade school, at least we do the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't even know if they do that anymore.
No, they don't, as far as I know.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. So it's just changing. And Charlie Kirk's message, turning point, a lot of people are having the hashtag, this is the turning point. And I think it was. So as evil as that act is, it was and is. Yes, I would
agree with that, and that's very spot on, by the way. Yep.
Yeah. No, a lot of interesting topics up to this point. I've got another maybe 10 minutes or so before I reach my destination. But anything else on what you're watching on TV, Charlie Kirk situation, or anything else that?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on in regard to all of that around it. One of the things that I've learned in studying a cultural subversion over the years is that it's not just the action that's taken, it's the reaction to it. And it's interesting to see the reaction to this in regard to some of these people who hate America and who hate what America stands for. And they're in regard of their behavioral patterns on this, you can see that they themselves no longer have any faith in our nation the Constitution, its institutions, any of that. They don't honor it. You can see it. And as a result of that, they spew a lot of this hatred, that the very motive that motivated this guy Rob Robinson that killed Charlie Kirk. So I've been looking at the reaction for that, and that to me indicates this part of this division that's now taking place, that we will see in our nation over the next 3 to 5 years. Where that's going to go is a whole other subject, but that's one of the things that I was looking for as a guy who's been, kind of the faith and observer kind of guy sitting back watching all of this. It gives me a little bit of chill, because I don't think people realize what direction we're going to go if we continue to do this kind of reaction to this. A lot of negative, and it's surprising how many people are. Some of the people you wouldn't expect in high places that are both Democrats and Republicans, and also that are in the Senate and the Congress, and not only from the federal government but at the state level as well. Their reactions also have been. Some of them are actually praising this. Now, a lot of the companies that are reading the emails from those that are reacting to this negatively are being fired from their jobs, and I probably have a problem with that as well. We have to talk about free speech and the result of all that. We can get into that another time, but the point being is just the reaction of what we're seeing indicates to me that we are reaching a level now where we're going into a major revolution if we don't turn it around.
Right. I think those are all great points. One thing I've noticed as well, I get certain just fathers, even mothers, they're scared for their children right now. They don't know what to do. Kids in grade school, and they're concerned. They're concerned about even being out in public. I had some friends where their children were at the Charlie Kirk event, and just my background for those listening, I'm from Utah. I've done many events at UVU. I know that campus well, and people are just now concerned. And again, Utah is one of the most conservative places on the planet. They call it Happy Valley in Utah County, so usually super safe. And now we have this, and any words of advice to keep your kids safe?
Yeah, we need to talk about that a little bit. We only got a few minutes here, but one of the things that will be coming relevant to everybody in regard to this assassination as it relates to teaching your kids and that kind of thing. It was not coincidence, all right, that the guys that were involved with this, and I think there was more than one, that they waited for them to do it in Utah. They could have done this anywhere in all the 65 or 80 colleges. This guy's already gone to 120, I think it is now. They could have done this anywhere. They did it there. Why did they do it? They did it in Happy Valley. That sends a signal. Okay, that's sending a signal to everybody that's saying, even in one of the most conservative religious states in the nation, you're seeing a level of debauchery here, a level of decadence that's being allowed. And this is a wake-up call to those living in a conservative state. And there are other conservative states out there too. Georgia's one of them. Iowa. You're seeing parts of Ohio. They need to wake up, because many of these young kids are being indoctrinated. That's what it is, not educated. Indoctrinated into rationalizing this kind of behavior. So going back to your school, the families now that we're seeing a lot of families taking their kids out of school from what they're teaching there. They're allowing all drag queens to come in and read stories to them. If that isn't debauchery, if that isn't going to twist and turn a young boy or a young girl's view of women and men, I don't know what is. Right. Well, that's part of the plan, is they've got to get them confused about sex and about who they are. Well, we discussed earlier. So that's what we're talking about here. So parents need to be aware of this. There's no question about that in relation to that. And what do? We get them back to the basics. Like you said earlier, you've got to start teaching them a biblical-based view, using that as a foundation based on absolutes. And that really is the beginning of this, of the education of your kids. My mom and dad, we had great teachers when I was in school, as I mentioned, but they emphasized the very basics, Judean Christian ethics that we should be raised on to make these proper decisions in life. And that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to say, hey, if you don't have a Bible in your home, go get one. Any bookstore, even you got a phone, if you can listen to this, Google it. It's on the internet. There's app stores with the scriptures. It's free to download. Start with the New Testament. The New Testament's great. That's Matthew, and read it. And read those words. They will absolutely help. It's free. If you can listen to this podcast, you can find yourself a Bible for free. And you can listen to it. Listen to it every day. Those words will help keep your family safe. And
if I may just throw this in, and those are very good points, by the way. I wrote a book years ago. I haven't published it yet, called "To Beautify the Soul: The Handbook of Spiritual Psychology." And what I did was I took the basic Judeo-Christian values that are written out of the Beatitudes, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And then when I did interviews with people that had near-death experiences, I asked them the importance of life as it relates to these principles. And they told me. So I wrote it all down, and I wrote a book about it. And someday we'll talk about that down the road when I can get it published. That being the issue, that's the issue of, in regard to what kids should be learning, is the very basics of what good behavior are and why we should be doing it. If you toss that out the window, as I think this Robinson kid did, if you do that, he's a man, I should say, they toss it out the window, this is the end result. And that's what our parents need to be telling our children, is if you continue to follow these bad behavior patterns, this is where you'll wind up. And that's what we're concerned about. How do we know that? Look at the gang situation in the ghettos areas. Almost 70% of those young men do not have fathers. They don't, and they weren't trained with any of this. And so this is the end result of it. So.
Right. I'd like to just say this too. I think this did cause a reawakening. I think people are pumped. They're excited. They're going back to church. But in the scriptures, it says time and time again, remember. How do we remember? You read your scriptures. I was taught this growing up all the time. And it's always the simple go-to answers. It was read your scriptures every day. Say your prayers morning and night. Go to church on Sunday. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Make that day sacred for worship. Do those things. Those simple things that I just stated truly will help you remember and long term and be consistent. Time and time again, the pride cycles always happen, and people will fall back to the old ways, and that'll most likely happen over the next few weeks, if not months, because it'll just kind of fizzle down. My hope is you guys stay excited, you keep going, you stay consistent, and you do the simple things every day. Read your scripture, say your prayers, go to church on Sundays, and that would just be my suggestion to anybody listening.
Absolutely. It's really about incorporating spiritual values in your daily life, and that's something that has to be exercised every day. You'll find, just to start out with, if you take your Bible out, all you need to read is about 4 to 5 chapters a day, 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening, and you'll have the entire Bible done in 1 year. So that right there is a good way to lay a foundation down. Take notes. Okay, get your paper out and write notes down and the first thoughts that come to your mind, write those down too. And you'll find before you know it, you'll have these kind of principles that you'll be able to incorporate in your life as an anchor and a guide. And that's what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. I had an experience a couple years ago. I won't get into it now, but my experience, a personal one, out of the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole you can go down of life and go any which direction, I felt Christ, Jesus Christ, truly is the rock. He is the foundation. He is the Savior. You can go and try every other path. It just won't work. It will never work, because Christ is the Lord and Savior. He's the foundation. His teachings are in the Bible. They're in the scriptures. And I highly suggest anybody and everybody listening to this to go and seek out those answers and go and hear his words, which are in the scriptures, and to pray and ask God if they're true. And I have personal witness that God will talk to you through thoughts and feelings, and will let you know. It'll be a total change in your life. He will start blessing you. You will start seeing the light through the darkness. And I just bear that testimony in Jesus' name. So,
thank you for doing that, and I would ditto that. By the way, that the Savior is the way, and He is the light, and that is the guide that we need, the foundation, in order to make these life decisions.
Yep, I agree. I'm about to my destination. I got about a minute. Any last words to close this up?
Well, I was just going to say that if you are having issues with anything like we talked about as it relates to making life decisions, you need to get back to the basics, and the Bible will really help you with that. And so I would close by saying, get to that now. You need to do that now. Those who are listening to this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Rick. I appreciate your time. I hope to continue to do more and more of these. In the comments section, feel free to just ask questions or say what you think. Ask questions on what you would like us to discuss in future podcasts and videos, and we'll be more than happy to go over that. So thank you so much. What's the date today? It's like September my goodness, 16th. There we go, September 16th, 2025. So be good, do good with love. This has been Weston Gleave and Rick, and appreciate you so much for chatting with me today.
You got it.
All right.
Glad to do it.
All right, Rick. I'm going to end the recording now and chat with you a little bit more.
Go ahead.